Hi, Mark Gallard. Thanks for visiting my site. In this video, I'd like to take a few minutes to go through the Roger Federer training video and help you understand and interpret it, and hopefully you'll get a better feeling of the things you need to do to improve your tennis game. There's 5 areas I'd like to address: agility, complex training, racket speed, weights, and plyometric training, all of which were featured in the Roger Federer video, and I'd like to help you understand them and use them in your own game. First thing I'd like to talk about was in the video how you saw Roger Federer using a lot of bands and doing a lot of agility with his feet at the start of the video. Now this is very common for tennis players, but first of all we have to understand what agility is. Agility is the ability to start, stop, change of directions, and maintain balance while doing all of these things at high speed. Now in a tennis match, you're expected to be able to perform 300 to 500 bursts of energy in an hour and a half to 2 hour match, and over 70% of tennis movement is on a lateral basis. That means side to side. So practicing side to side movement in agility is very important. Now the second thing I would like to talk about is complex training and what exactly that is. In the video we saw Roger Federer using complex training to help himself improve his serve. And what we saw in this video was Roger Federer using a 6 pound, or in this case a 4 pound medicine ball, which he used to throw overhead right before he served. And what he did is we saw him coming up to the line, throwing the ball overhead, and then serving immediately after. And this is called complex training. And what this does is it promotes post-action potentiation. What this means is, by using the overhead throws with a heavier weight, we've activated these muscles that are needed in the serve, and then once we've done that, we'll pick up our racket, serve right away, and we hope that we will get a little bit more power and a little bit more explosion out of these muscles if we perform it right after we've done the overhead medicine ball throw. Now this can also be done with the lower body as well, and I know another way I can show you to do this is if we use a slightly larger 6 pound medicine ball, okay, and we can just do a basic squat with this ball, jumping up and then using it right before we serve with our racket. Okay, we can take a serve now, and hopefully we're going to get just a little bit more power and explosion out of our legs, because again we've used the process of complex training and post-action potentiation, which is the result of complex training, to increase the power that we generate from our serve through our legs. But the Federer video you saw, he wasn't working his legs, he was working his upper body. The third area I'd like to address in that video that you've seen is racket speed. You saw Roger in that video doing some drills where he used a weighted or a covered racket, and this is used to increase his racket speed. Now these things are very easy to buy in a store, or you can design your own, but the reason that racket speed is so important is because that's where the end result of the kinetic chain is. It comes up through the ground and finishes off in our racket, and the faster we can swing our racket, the more power and explosion we'll get. Now there's been a few studies conducted, and we do know that if we can practice swinging with a weighted racket that's approximately 600% heavier than our regular racket, if we can swing that 150 times a week, 150 times a day, 4 times a week for 12 weeks, we should see gains of at least 10% in our overall racket speed, and that in tennis is huge. Racket speed is very important, so a very good drill, just buy a cover to put over your racket and swing it 4 times a week on any stroke you feel that needs to improve. And if you can do that 150 times a day, 4 times a week for 12 weeks, you should see rapid improvements. Now, the fourth area I'd like to discuss is the weights that we saw Roger doing here. We saw him doing some leg weights in the gym. We also saw him doing some upper body weights. Now, the important thing to understand about weights is how we work them and why we're working them. Rather than just going into the gym and working any muscle, we're going to really be specific to tennis. And one thing I really want to point out here is that Roger was really targeting his fast twitch muscle fibers during this workout video, because of the way he was doing them. Now you'll notice, if you go back and watch the video again, that the weights he was using were actually relatively light, but the way he was performing them was at a very rapid speed. He was doing the movements very fast. Now there's 2 ways to attack the fast twitch muscle fibers, and you have 2 types of fibers. Type 1, which is a slow twitch muscle fiber. Aerobic long distance runners have a lot of these fibers. Or type 2, which are fast twitch muscle fibers, which are for speed and for power, and they're what we need in tennis. And as I was saying, there's 2 ways to attack those muscles which we want to work. The first way is to perform with higher repetitions but in a faster manner. And the second way to attack those fibers is to perform a much lower repetition of the exercise, but with a very heavy weight. And that's very important that we understand these two types. And he did these very fast, these exercises. If you go back, take time, watch that video, and incorporate that kind of a workout into your exercise routine, you'll see vast improvements. Now the final area I'd like to discuss is the plyometrics. And we saw him doing a lot of things where he was jumping on and off of boxes and even throwing a tennis ball at the same time to activate the motor skills that are needed in tennis while he was doing that. But during this plyometric training, what I want to discuss is the concept of power versus strength. And it's a big misunderstanding in tennis of the two. Strength is just simply how much ability we have to move an object from one position to another. But power is what's needed in tennis, and power is basically considered force times velocity. So in order for us to understand power, the greater the force that we can apply and the faster the speed that we can apply that force, the more power we'll get. So we have two variables for power, force and velocity, and we need to be able to improve those two variables either one at a time, or preferably both of those, by doing some of the exercises I've talked about. So we can improve velocity by working on swing speed, or we can improve force by becoming stronger to improve the force times the velocity to give us the power. I'll give you an example. Arnold Schwarzenegger, big bodybuilder, he is very strong and he has a lot of force, but he may not be able to use that force with high velocity. And without velocity, we only have strength. So what I want you to understand is the difference between strength and power. Strength is just the ability to move a weight from one position to another. Power is the ability to take that force generated by strength and move it fast or with velocity. And remember, all of these drills that you're doing, the more tennis specific you can keep them, like you saw Roger doing it in his video, the more easily transferable they are to the tennis court and to your improvements on the court as a player.